And then we've had will have been really successful. Then I'm going to be really impressed with us.
Yeah, I know. Pats on the backs all around, Emma. This is good. This is good.
Okay. Oh. Hold on, we might just have to do a retry of that. Well, it says it's live streaming, so let's just stick with that, shall we? Fantastic. Oh, welcome, guys. I'm really excited to have Chris Dornan here. Chris, I think you are going to have to mute yourself. Yeah, Chris Dornan here, who is just absolutely fabulous, and purpose-driven developments. So that's going to be a really interesting one to follow on to. And yeah, welcome. So guys, please, I know a lot of you absolutely love our content. So if you could please ping at least 6 people who you think would find this really useful, and bring them on in, that would be fantastic. And this will be playing on YouTube, and just as a reminder, so on Emma Howitt's Pure Abodes. And we do actually make them into shorter stints as well, so kind of 10-15 minutes, and then that means you can come and just do those snippets and listen to those. So fantastic. So please guys, do feel free to yeah, ping some people in. Okay, so Chris and I will be chatting for the majority of this, but please again feel free to add in any questions that you might have, so that we can answer them along the way. Okay, and Chris has sent me another thing. It looks like that's the same link though, Chris.
It does. I know Dion's in the background trying to find the most up-to-date one. So
don't worry. Well, let's just run with it, and if not, I'll make sure I get it on by the end. But if not, we'll just pop on with that one. Okay.
Perfect.
So fantastic. Okay, so we are going to jump straight in here and have a chat through with Chris. So a little bit from my perspective with Chris. I have known Chris now for about 4.5 years. I met him. He was actually one of my mentors. He has been an absolute inspiration to me right the way through, has always given incredibly well-balanced information. He comes from a very strong position of doing the do, so to speak. So he literally, if he says and recommends something, that means he's doing it himself, which is an incredibly strong place to come from. And yeah, and it's just been an absolute joy. I've also been on his retreat, which was, oh my gosh, it was amazing. I really loved it, and I'm sure I will be coming back and coming on one again at some stage. But yeah, a really fantastic thing. So then, yes, so let me now hand over to Chris. So Chris, if you could just do a really quick intro into who you are, if nobody knows about you, and then we can really jump into this purpose-driven developments and find out more about that.
Amazing, Emma. Well, thank you so much for the intro, and thanks for having me. Great to be here chatting to you, your audience and your tribe. It's just really great to be here. So guys, for anyone who hasn't met me before, doesn't know me, I'm Chris Dornan. I have come from a construction background prior to property. So I started life as a carpenter, having a love for woodwork and development. And I worked up through the rank, became project manager, and that's how I approached property, for a very methodical sort of hands-on approach, really. And when Sen and I started the business in 2015, we got involved in serviced accommodation. We were trying to do flips. We were looking at land development. We were looking at all sorts of different things. And we really zoomed in on serviced accommodation as our main focus to get our cash flow built up within the business before using my build team and my former skill set as a developer and a builder to apply to that arm of the business to really build out commercial conversions. And so that was our is now our key focus. We built the SA business to then support that.
Fantastic. Amazing. Amazing. Okay. So for some reason I've got random people coming up, but Tina, thank you for, for muting yourself. Okay, well, look, let's just jump in. So I know when we had a chat about what we were going to cover, one of the things that I absolutely love about you and Sen, so if anyone isn't aware, Chris has a business partner called Sen Wharton. He's written a fantastic book, Predictable Property Profits, and that is all about finding the need, so i.e. the end consumer, and that's something that I also talk a lot with Paul Merrick. So it seems to be that the successful people are talking a lot of the same stuff. So yeah, just tell us a bit what exactly purpose-driven development means to you.
Okay, so this was essentially when we were first starting out in SA. We were essentially, if anyone remembers the old classic movie Field of Dreams. Well, we were using that philosophy when we started. It was very much a build it and they will come strategy, which, as you know, is not a very good strategy. And so while we were getting excited and we were going out and getting this business off the ground, we were taking on properties in the centre of Edinburgh, thinking this is brilliant, this is really good. How can we go wrong? We're finding city centre, really prime positioned properties that would serve, the tourist market predominantly is where we started out. And that was great during the festival. As anyone's aware of Edinburgh Festival, about 1.5 billion people come through over that 4 or 5 weeks. So it's a very, very busy time. And, we did very, very well. We made, I think, net about £2,500 profit in the first month on our first property, 1-bedroom rent to rent. And we thought, this is great. As we transitioned into the winter months, obviously, things quietened down a little bit. People were cottoning on to serviced accommodation, Airbnb, and it got very quiet. And so we hit the January of 2017 with now 4 properties. We've got the first one in July in 2016. We got to January in 2017, and our business was making a loss. And so essentially, this was no steady foundation to be building our business off. So we sort of sat down thinking, okay, what can we do to make this more predictable, make it more of a steady income stream, and make it so it's clearly not loss making. We were having to subsidize it at times through December and January. And so that really put us in a thinking mode of, okay, well, where are our guests coming from? How can we find long-term bookings? And what can we do to try and take the risk and take the guesswork out of these properties? Because we had big visions, big goals of having 100 properties in a portfolio. And as a lot of people do when they come through the mentoring mastermind tables, they've got these big grandiose goals of having a huge portfolio. And what we realized that we just couldn't build that portfolio and the strategy that we were deploying at the time. So for us, the whole purpose-driven approach, whether it be through SA, development, acquisitions, whatever it might be, it was born out of that quiet, quite stressful couple of months leading into 2017, where we decided to, okay, well, what's bringing people in? We'd heard about contractors and whatnot coming in for specifically the SA world here. And so we started looking at a handful of different areas, not just Edinburgh, to see, okay, what infrastructure projects are going on? What development projects are going on? What is bringing contractors into these areas for long periods of time? We'd heard of people getting 3 months, 6 months bookings, but we just didn't really know where to start. And so we got to work, Sen and myself, hitting the desk, hitting the computer, making calls, and really looking at every resource we could find to try and understand what would bring people into our properties, other than just putting it on Airbnb, Booking.com, and really hoping that people would come and book the properties. What could we do to take the bull by the horns and get in front of people? And that led to reaching out to a number of different accommodation brokers, if you like. And over the course of that January, February, we spoke to a number of different companies that place builders, specifically contractors, in accommodation. And that led to a relationship with 2 specific companies, one predominantly who had a very good relationship inside a local power plant, energy from waste plant that was being developed near where we live, right in our goldmine area. And so that was the sort of light bulb moment that, okay, hang on a minute, this guy has got 20 people or 30 people coming in from different parts of Europe, different parts of the UK, and they needed accommodating for 3 months, 6 months, a year. And so through building that relationship, we were able to really identify, right, this is the way to really establish this relationship. This is the way to build the business up. And one day in January, Sen got a call from this broker who we're still in touch with, who still work with to this day, to ask if we could accommodate, I think it was 5 guys coming to work on one of these energy from waste plants, but they needed the place for, I think it was for 5 months. So at that point, we hit the phones. It was great. Yeah, this is exactly what we're looking for. It's like, this stuff actually works. So at that point, it was a case of hitting the phones. We didn't have properties in the specific area at the time. It was closer to where we live, a little bit further out of Edinburgh. And so it was a case of trying to find other serviced accommodation operators that we could place the booking with in the short term until we could find property. And then at that point, we could transition them into our property once we found somewhere. So both of us hit the phones, and Sen managed to actually identify a farmer close by, within 5 minutes of where he lives, actually, who had just a standard rental property. And that was our first contractor rent-to-rent serviced accommodation property that we took on. I'll come into the development bit in a minute, but this is all giving context as to how we sort of approached this. And so that first property took us from making a loss to turning a profit of just north of £1,800 that first month in 45 days. So within the course of January and first 2 weeks of February, we transitioned from loss making to having an idea of this is a predictable way to grow a portfolio. So we then applied that to everything we did moving forward. We nurtured that relationship. We kept in touch with this guy, and we've now just used that philosophy for identifying the demand. So if for you guys listening, if you've read Sen's book, or if you do read Sen's book, Predictable Property Profits, you'll hear us talking about the DICE model. And that for us is identifying the demand, finding the solution. So D is for demand, I is for identifying the solution, C is for gaining some form of commitment. So with these specific companies that we were speaking to, we were finding out exactly what they needed, how many bedrooms, for how long, for how many people, and what distance did it need to be from the specific site. So that allowed us to get very, very focused on what we were looking for. We were able to get a level of commitment. So C is a commitment, and then E is for execute. It's take all that information, take all that data, and just go out and hit the roads, hit the phones, hit the agents, find the properties. So that way it's done in a very, very predictable way, removing the guesswork. So once we'd established that, we ran that philosophy for 2017 till current day. So what's that, 6 years? And that then got applied to everything else we did. So while we were building up the SA business, we were also building up our commercial conversion business. We were using my build team and my former expertise in the construction side of things to be able to really grow the development business, albeit that was a lesser focus. If you're familiar with 70-20-10, SA was our 70, development was our 20, and our 10 was our training and mentoring at the time. And so we started just using that approach to everything we did, whether it was looking at commercial properties, whether it was looking at commercial conversion opportunities, land development, or even just buy to let. Is really just having a very, very clear understanding of who are we trying to serve with this property, where do they need to be, and what exactly do they need. So that if that gives a bit of a concept and so how the approach was born. I guess it's like any business really, in understanding who's a customer avatar. It was applying that business approach to a property portfolio and a property business. And that was kind of when we saw a light bulb was that we're not just trying to grow an SA portfolio here, we're really trying to create a sustainable business around property. And we can use the same approach to all the different strategies within property that we work on.
Amazing. It is so key, isn't it? And I think we talk a lot about that on here, is that it is really the business of property. It's not just we're just going to go and get some property and make it work. We really have to take into consideration how to make it into a business, and not only that, but a sustainable business. So this is really interesting. Just on a few practical bits there. So you talked about just for people who are maybe new to this, Chris, I think you are going to have to mute each time I'm speaking. Perfect. Yeah, just you know, for those who might be new or who may be struggling, you spoke about, you know, finding those resources, so finding the people who need, in that particular case, your accommodation, and then you also spoke about accommodation brokers. Can you sort of expand just a little bit more about that? How would you recommend people go out and do this? I'm literally writing a book about this as well, so it's really interesting when you're looking at all the different places that you can look, and whether these accommodation brokers, if they're national or where people might come across them.
Sorry, the button disappeared there. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Great. Okay, so yeah, I mean, the companies that we were reaching out to were national. One was actually international. One was based in Luxembourg. And essentially we were looking at just Googling contractor accommodation. You know, if we go back to the contract. I don't know if they're still around or if they're still trading. But that was one of the companies, and we just basically, you know, used as many Google searches as we could to think, how can we find contractors? You know, whether it's beds for builders, comfy workers, whatever the companies were specifically called, we were just Googling contractor accommodation, basically, and then hitting the phones, phoning these companies up to see, you know, what is their approach? How do they find properties currently? Who do they use? How could we become one of their preferred suppliers in our area? What would we need to have in place? And so, yeah, I mean, it was literally online research, spending a lot of time just going through pages and pages on Google and trying to find these things, and then making contact with these companies, staying in touch with them, trying to you know, initiate and develop the relationships early on. That was the key thing that started getting us results, and then using things like Construction News UK, I think online magazines, trade magazines, to have a look at what projects were running in different areas. And then from there, we could start really being specific when we were speaking to some of these brokers, ask them, do you have anyone working on this site, that site? So we were able to use that to try and get as much information as we could about the sites. And then just through the conversations, being able to record the information, put it all in spreadsheets, and then, you know, we've got a reference point that we could use whenever we were speaking to new people. So it probably made us sound a little bit more experienced than we were at the time, but you know, it was giving us that initial conversation starter and allow us to sort of really just focus on what we're trying to do. At the time, clearly we only had a small handful of properties, so it was just really selling on who we were and our approach to accommodation and to looking after our guests, which obviously in the very early days is conceptual. It's more about selling you, isn't it? You know, the companies you're speaking to, they're buying into you more so than necessarily your company. So yeah, that was really it. It's focusing on what we wanted to be providing as value to them, and then understanding what they were doing at the time. So in regards to actually speaking to them, it's literally a case of doing a bit of online research, finding the companies that are accommodating contractors.
Amazing.
Specifically do you want to know from a development side, or you want to come on to that?
Yeah, should we come on to development in a minute?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So one thing that's really amazing, and guys, I can see that we've got lots of people jumping on now. So could you please ping some people who you think might find this really valuable so we can get some more people on here. Thank you, guys. Yeah, so that's really interesting. So you talked about, obviously, you know, you talk about this as being a mistake, but inherently there was a need, but it was a solitary need. And I know that with serviced accommodation, you know, I love the phrase which comes from Nat from the Right Property Group, is multiple and consistent streams of demands, and that's what's really key. So just having one event in Edinburgh is not going to keep, you know, everyone, you know, eating and all of those kind of things. So what you saw is you found that there was an issue, and then what a lot of people do, don't they, is they jump on booking.com, Airbnb, and they're solely reliant on that, which is incredibly frightening. And I've actually been following all the amazing work that sort of Boostly and Mark Simpson do about really raising us as a group of SA providers to have some power, so they don't do this. And you've done exactly that. You've gone away. But what I'm picking out here is this change from basically going into January and having a massive loss-making business, and within 45 days changing that around. So just from a general perspective, what did it take for you guys? Because you could have just literally gone, oh, this is it, it's all gone wrong, oh, we're failures, we can't carry on, and we better take our 6-month break clause and just hand them back, and maybe we'll do something else. What was it that enabled you to take what seemingly must have been massive action? It sounded like there was a lot of, perhaps brainstorming, masterminding. Was it kind of like a path that you took, or was it literally like, boom? How did that kind of 45 days look for you?
Yeah, quite nail biting, to be honest. It was, Sen and I are both very driven people. We both have young families, very young at that time. I'd literally just had twins, and it was kind of a sink or swim kind of moment for us. We knew we both had a passion for property, we both had a passion for business, and we had a strong belief that in ourselves, failure wasn't an option. It did take digging deep. It took some big hours. It took long days, early mornings, late nights. I guess one of the biggest things that kept us driving was the fact that we were part of a strong mastermind at the time. We had invested in our education. We had invested in being a part of a group to support, stretch us, challenge our thinking. And it was probably, as well as the sort of strong benefit you have of being in a business partnership, being able to bounce ideas off each other. And, if one's feeling down, if one's feeling sort of, I guess, unmotivated, or not necessarily unmotivated, but just feeling like, oh man, this is just really, really hard work. You can pull each other along. And, but knowing that we had young families that we were ultimately building this business to support, that was the really strong why, having that why, the why behind the why, to really keep us pushing. That was a huge inspiration. I've got 3 little girls, Sen's got 3 little boys who, everything that we do is to basically create a life on our terms. And, at the time I had a really busy main contracting business. Sen was building up a software business, and they were just really high stress businesses. That while you get some enjoyment out of them, they weren't what we wanted to do long term. It wasn't what our sort of focus was for our lives going forward. So knowing what we could achieve with property, seeing other people that were just a few steps ahead of us that have achieved it, that really helped us dig deeper and push through that dark January. But apart from that, it was the buzz. When you're at the early stages of any business, it's the buzz of like finding something that works. Okay, that doesn't work. Great, let's move on. Let's take the lessons from it. Let's move on to the next thing. And that's business, isn't it? No matter what business you're in, you try something. Either it works or it doesn't. If it doesn't work, move on, try the next thing. Use the lessons, take them as important learns, and then apply them to the next thing. Every mistake you make is an opportunity to do something better the next time. So yeah, I don't think we really got down in the dumps during that January. It was a bit of a squeaky bum month, I'm not going to lie, but we had income from our other properties or from our other businesses, and we just knew we were going to make it work. So we just had to re-up, assess what we were doing, what had worked, what hadn't worked, and go again, and just keep pushing. And getting the right steer from our mentors at the time, that was huge. We had Paul Smith and Aniko in our corner. They were just pushing us, like Paul's sending your thinking sky high, and Aniko's giving you the systems behind it to make it all happen. So, they were an incredible inspiration for us at the time, and just being in a really strong community, that really helped us, being around other people that are going through similar things. That always helps you when you get to talk it through and get other people's, ideas and take on things.
Amazing. So for those of you who can only hear and not actually see Chris is currently in Mallorca, is it?
Yeah, we are near Puerto Pollensa in the north of Mallorca.
Nice.
Lovely.
So Yes, very kindly, because I couldn't, because unfortunately all our other dates didn't quite work. So Chris has got this beautiful background. He's got kids running around, clearly jumping in and out of pools. So it really is very idyllic. I do love it. Thank you. Amazing. Yeah, masterminding, just it is such a huge part of my world as well. I absolutely love the whole philosophy around Think and Grow Rich. And in fact, I daily listen to Earl Nightingale's condensed narration of Think and Grow Rich. And yeah, one of the pointers is masterminding, and it's just so key. And it doesn't necessarily have to be just with property people either. I have a business masterminding as well, and it's clearly worked incredibly well for you guys as well. Okay, so yeah, so you obviously you had this kind of, not mistakes, but you had a journey that wasn't necessarily the correct journey to have a really successful business around your property. And then obviously you started to get this approach, and then you spoke about this kind of 70-20-10. Again, I absolutely love that. It's a great way of running your business. So how did you, so obviously you started off with the serviced accommodation. How did the next kind of step on making that decision to move into the development side? And again, how does that look to you, so others might be able to kind of see your journey and maybe to get some inspiration?
Yeah, great. Yeah, Think and Grow Rich, by the way, that was one of the first books that I read when I was starting out in business. Absolutely amazing book. I think it's just brilliant. Okay, yeah, so for us initially, doing the rent-to-rent serviced accommodation, that was about setting up our cash flow. We needed to get our cash flow to a point where we could leave contracting for me, and Sen could close down his software business. And we made sure that we had our monthly expenses all covered. So we worked out what our number was, how much we needed to earn, and that was our initial target. So we set that up. So our 70% was focusing on getting our cash flow set up. Once we had our cash flow set up, we could then focus 20% of our time on understanding what we didn't know about commercial conversions, finding properties, finding land, and then we could start to think about the asset plays and the profit plays. You know, we were looking at 1 bed, 2 bed conversions to, you know, buy a 1 bedroom flat, turn it into 2 bedroom, flip it on. That was going to be our sort of profit play, if you like. And so that was the 70 and the 20. The 10 was just something we always aspired to. And as we were doing this and just getting to speak to other people about it kind of naturally we thought it'd be quite nice to be able to be mentors and be able to coach other people to do this at some point. So that was our 10% focus, because it wasn't a big priority for us at the time. We had to focus on getting our cash flow right. We could then use that cash flow. We didn't take anything out of our property business for a long time. We just reinvested. And so as we got to the point, in fact, to go back a little bit, as we got to the point where our SA business was generating a really nice turnover, we got it to about 60 grand a month revenue, which was a nice place for us to be. By the end of year one, we were close to that. And at the end of, I think it was 2017, 18, some of the projects that we'd been focused on in our area were coming to a close. And so we were having to work really, really hard to go out and do all this marketing again. Yes, we still had the contacts for the brokers, but we were having to go out to all other different avenues to try and understand, you know, how are we going to fill these properties? By this point, we'd got to, I think, 19 or 20 SA units in our area. So it was not a huge portfolio, but it's big enough to be having to work hard to fill it all the time. And so we decided to park the growth of the SA business. We still grow slightly, but nothing like what we were anticipating. But we managed to get that revenue business up to about 80 grand a month going forward. And that was kind of just a nice level. That just gave us everything we needed, covers all our costs, pays for our team, and gives us an income. So that was looked after. So at that point, while I'd been closing down the contracting business and really going out to find commercial conversions, to find land, and putting the time into sourcing, putting our systems in place, and really getting all the management systems in place for getting that business going. That then became more of a focus. And as you get one business that, you know, 70% focus, the ethos with it, I know you know, Emma, but for your audience, is your 70. Once that gets to where it needs to be, it's systemized, you've got a team running it, that kind of then moves around to the 10. And the 20 and the 10 move up the scale. So the development side of things then became our sort of primary focus, because we had a team in place. We were able to manage the SA business on, currently, it varies, but on average about 4 to 5 hours a week in managing our team, because we've got an awesome property manager and operations manager. So when the development side of things started to move up the chain, we had to think about how exactly, what are we actually trying to achieve with the development? Initially, we wanted to just buy commercial buildings, convert them to serviced accommodation. That was the initial play. But in doing so, we thought, well, we don't actually want to have a much bigger SA business. So what are we going to do with this? So we started thinking, well, if we're taking on a commercial building that's going to be 5 apartments, 10 apartments, we don't sell properties. We generally build out, refinance, and then hold the properties and look to get them on long leases. We dabbled a little bit in the commercial side of things, although we didn't really get too deep into that. We're not keen. We've got a couple of commercial properties, but it wasn't something we wanted to focus on. But we used the approach of finding a tenant, like we were, to take a block of apartments for an extended period of time. So we essentially used the same approach now. So with everything we look at now, predominantly we're looking to work with supported living providers. So we started looking at, okay, who is operating in that space? What are they doing? What types of properties do they need? Where do they need them? And from that, then we could apply the same DICE model that we spoke about before to thinking about where we might go to set up a new portfolio. If it's not in our local area, where in the country are these supported living companies operating, and where do they have the highest demand for properties? So the same process, reaching out to these companies, Google searches, trying to find out who's operating, using our network as well, reaching out to our network to find out who do we need to be speaking to, where are they, and getting introductions where we could, using our network to sort of introduce us to different people. We went on the Supported Living Gateway, which was really helpful. That opened our eyes to how big a demand there is for supported living. And so by understanding that model and understanding, what the requirements are, we then knew that we can go out and take on between 6 and 20 apartments in a block, depending on the company that's operating them. And we know that they are generally between 1 and 2 bedrooms that are generally required, and they need 1 property within the building for an office or for staff accommodation. So that then forms a very structured approach to exactly what we're looking for from a development perspective. And what we found is that care homes, nursing homes that have closed down after COVID, maybe not meeting the current regulations, they're a really good opportunity for us to be able to buy, because they've been shut down, they've been empty for a while. Some of them are very dilapidated. So you can generally find a lot of these. Now, they don't always stack up with development, as you know, you have to have a big pipeline to be able to find things that really do add up, especially with build costs going up, property prices going up. They can be a bit few and far between to find things that work. But that is then give us our sort of structured approach, same as we did with serviced accommodation, to understand where in the country we're going, what types of properties we're looking at. And then we use that search criteria to then phone around commercial surveyors, letting agents for portfolio landlords that might be looking to exit the market, and estate agents that happen to come across sort of larger plots, or they tend to catch wind of things that are coming in. So it is relationship building. It's speaking to as many different kind of agents as you can and surveyors as you can. And that's essentially that's the approach that we use. So that lets us just be very, very focused on where we're going, what we're looking for. And by understanding generally what the build costs, they'll vary slightly, but really getting as clear an understanding as you can in any given area that you go to before you dive into something. My background in construction and project management, I've essentially operated as a QS in my building company since 2009, and then through into what we do now. So I can very quickly sort of adapt and sort of have a fairly good idea of what it's going to cost to convert a building. But with the end user in mind, we know what spec we're taking it to.
Amazing.
So that's how it's kind of transitioned into the development side of things.
Amazing. Gosh, there's so many things that you've covered off there, but I just wanted to raise a few points. What I really love about your particular 70-20-10 is that you were very focused initially on cash flow. So that was where it was to start with. And then the next segment was kind of profit and assets. And that is just a really lovely way of going through it. And I know a lot of us, it's like you hit your cash flow first, but then quite often what we do is we then just carry on growing that. And as you said, that can actually just make you, again, really busy. and it's kind of looking at what those end goals are. So of course the initial goal needs to be, you know, the cash flow, but actually what do you then want beyond that? Do you want to carry on being very busy, or do you want to then start looking at something different, like you did, is looking at this development again, still with the end in mind, still with being purpose driven, so to speak, and moving on to the developments. Could you just clarify for us and for those people, when you're talking about supported living, there's just so much, isn't there, out there when we hear about kind of supported living and all of these different things. What does supported living look like in your business?
Okay, so we are not the operators. We're looking for companies that there's so many different ranges of supported living. Like you say, it could be young adolescents that have got possibly behavioural difficulties. It could be elderly people that need assistance, so more assisted living. It can range. It goes, full spectrum, kids right through to people that are sort of seeing their latter days, if you like. But they're just people that generally need support. They need help. Now, for us, the supported living operators, they would be our tenants, if you like. So we're just looking to find out what exactly they need from a building. How can we provide a comfortable, inspiring living space? If it is people that are they've got learning difficulties, or whatever challenges they're facing, we want to be able to provide accommodation, same as we did with service accommodation, that really gives someone somewhere nice to live. It allows them to enjoy their space. If it's more of a rehabilitation kind of place, then it's somewhere that allows them to get back on their feet. One of the things we have focused on since 2020, since COVID, is emergency housing. So a big part of our SA portfolio now goes to our local council, and they use it as emergency housing or temporary housing for people who may have lost a job or had a relationship breakdown, or are just a couple of rungs away from getting permanent housing provided by the council. And we've really structured our SA business around that. And that was what kind of initially got us thinking about supported living, because in that space, you're really helping people get back on their feet. And we specifically employed a operations manager who had a social care background, so that we could understand our guests even more. So coming back to this DICE model, really, really getting to the nitty gritty of how can we best serve our potential guests. And so from understanding a bit more about that space, we started digging into, okay, well, there seems to be a huge demand for this here. There seems to be a real shortage of accommodation. And that was what took us to Supported Living Gateway, to really understand more about them. And to really think, okay, well, we've spent so much time figuring out this space of emergency housing. How can we then apply it to supported living? And we didn't want to have a bigger, noisier business. We call serviced accommodation could be quite a noisy business, as you know. So that was what we weren't trying to create an even bigger beast. We wanted to have passive income from our property business that allows us to do the things we love doing, which now is a lot more focused around coaching and mentoring others in this space. We've valued massively from our mentors, and having people just reach back and give us a leg up. And it's incredibly inspiring to be able to do that for other people now. So for us being able to have assets with one operator who takes the whole building for an extended period of time, maybe 5 years, 10 years, that allows us to service the people that we want to serve, and provide accommodation for the people who need it. Allows us to grow our assets. It also allows us to grow our income and allows us to do the things that we love doing with our families, and allows us to spend our time helping others get their property business off the ground.
Amazing. And this really goes back into sort of fulfilling so many elements. So you talked about, having a end consumer that you could actually create the properties for. So I know when we talk about SA and how the people, people say, oh, how am I going to decorate it? Or how am I going to do that? Well, it's really simple, isn't it? When you know exactly who's coming in there and what they want, then you're going to answer their needs. So when it comes down to costing refurbs, to building these things, suddenly you've got this whole very clear pathway of how you can do it. And I know obviously with your building background and your massive experience with doing these things, it's then there is no guesswork, is there? It's kind of all taken out. And I know having sometimes really enjoying the description of decision fatigue. And that is a real genuine thing in life. So you'll see a lot of, like Steve Jobs wore the same clothes each day. It just takes away one more decision. So if you've got that in your refurb, which can seem extremely overwhelming for some people, when you know exactly what it needs to be and who you're designing it for and what exactly they need, it's so easy. And then also on top of that, you talked about having pride in that, and that's great, isn't it? So not only are you providing something for others, you're taking great pride in the fact that you can produce something that really is beneficial, rather than, oh, I hope it's going to be all right, shall I do this kind of kitchen, shall I offer this in the bathroom? It really does kind of walk through it. So I love that. Now I'm just very aware of time, but I know we kind of very briefly touched on it, but would you mind just delving a little bit more into your dice model, because it is a really fantastic tool to use?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So yeah, where do you want me to start with that? I mean,
just talking through it. I think you kind of briefly went through it, but it'd be great just to each word, what it represents.
A bit more detail.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So D stands for demand. So whatever strategy it is you're focused on, whatever business is you're running on, is who is your customer avatar? Who are your guests going to be? Who are your tenants going to be? If it is the development side and you're looking for one tenant that's going to take multiple properties on one lease, who are they? What do they need? Where do they want it? Get as much information as you possibly can about what their pain points are. Really understand your guests, tenants, whoever it might be. Really understand that as much as possible. So find out, that's the demand. Find the demand. Identifying the solution is you're then looking at, okay, well, how can I create this bespoke offering for the specific end user that you're looking to work with? So whether it's supported living or emergency housing or tourists, whoever it might be, how can you find the right types of properties in the right location? How can you kit them out in the most efficient way possible? Little things like, what tech do you need? Do you have to have lifts? Do you need stair lifts? Whatever it might be, is really identifying how can you make your offering an absolute no-brainer for the people you want to have staying in your properties. So that's identifying the solution. Gaining commitment, the C in the DICE model, is really through the conversations you're having. You hear it a lot in commercial space, is getting pre-let agreements. Now, it's very, very similar. Now, slightly more difficult to do with individual properties or with SA generally, if you're just hitting the open market. But if you know what guests you're looking to serve, and it works more for your contractors, emergency housing, sort of longer term tenants or guests, that you can really try and get, okay, if you were to find 5 apartments in, I don't know, Ashford, that are all 2 bedrooms. They have got a communal stair with a lift taken to each property, so they've got wheelchair access throughout. We will take those properties off you for the next 5 years at this rental level. So then you've got a level of commitment. Now, if you can get a contract signed, great. In our case, you don't always get a contract signed necessarily up front, but you can get as much commitment as possible to give you the confidence. So that was me there. So you can get as much commitment as possible before you go out and take on the properties. And that for us, that takes the guesswork out. That takes the risk factor out. So you know what you're looking for. You know that there's a very good chance, if not have it guaranteed, that as soon as you get the properties, they will be rented out immediately. And then the E in the DICE model is execute. Is then once you've got all these sort of data points, all this information pulled together, it's going out and each week repeat the process. You're going out to find exactly what's needed and do it as many times as required, and depending on what your aspirations are for the size of your business, it's really going out and doing the same thing. So if you've got one company, if they're looking for 5 properties, that's all they need. Once you've done that, it's on to the next. So you just follow the same process. So it's just executing, really taking massive action to make sure that your business is just predictable and that you're hitting those results over and over and over again. Amazing.
So I've just got a few people asking for some links, which I will chuck in 2 seconds, guys. It's just what I like with you guys is you're just so very clear with your path, with the route and where you're going, and that makes it so much easier not to be chopping and changing. You know what not to do that day. If it's not getting you where you need to go, then you're not going to be doing it, are you? So that's really great. Now, I really wanted to just touch on your kind of this, again, we're talking about it being business and your kind of business acumen. And I know from your perspective, you've got some real sort of strengths. And I wonder if we might just touch on those briefly before coming on to, you know, the 10%, which is the mentoring side, which I know you're now really moving on to. So yeah, as a sort of a project sort of management, you've got these real strengths in kind of operations and processes. How have you managed to sort of implement that kind of into the business, into this sort of new property business? Has that been an easy move? Have you been able to impart that knowledge to others, or are you still kind of in control of that?
Well, I'm not going to lie, I am a little bit of a control freak with some of these things, Emma, but I'm a recovering control freak. So no, the systems that I've built up over the years, you know, whether they're probably far from perfect, but they worked very well for me. And what I found is, as we have sort of evolved and as our team has grown, they have had to adapt and they have had to change. I've gone from having myself as the primary CEO of the company with the development or the building side of things, project managing everything myself, and trying to sort of work with the personalities of some of the guys that you have on site specifically, sometimes being a little bit resistant to new processes or new systems, to now where we aren't operating as main contractor, for one. So our team we've got two on the ground and we've got a virtual team. And what I've always sort of learned from the early days of building is that everybody likes to do things differently. So while my processes work really well for me, and you know, this is like same with spreadsheets. So if I build a spreadsheet and you build a spreadsheet, we might get to the same end result, but how it actually translates could be worlds apart. And so me coming in and trying to use your spreadsheets or your processes, it could take me an eternity to figure it out, and likewise, vice versa. So what we've tried to be really sort of open to is, while we've set the processes and systems up that we've used, because even Sen and myself would have drastically different ways of approaching systems, but they get the end result. So what we tried to do is, we've got our systems, we've got our ops manual, we've got all the ways we operate, from the SA to development to mentoring, everything. But the team that we brought in over the last few years, we've really given them a lot of freedom to evolve those processes. We'll work with people. We operate on a system called SCS. So we have a weekly meeting at the start of the week. We have a midweek check-in with everybody, and then we check in at the end of the week to sign off. So set up, check in, sign off. That's generally how we run the SA business. And we operate the same way with project management side of things. So what I've done with the processes that I've built up over the years is I've tried to explain them, and I've brought our team in, shared it with everybody. They will use it. And I say, look, if there's anything at all you can see, because I'm by no means a whiz at systems and whatnot. I'm good at executing things. I'm good at following the process, and I've set things up so that they work as efficiently as I can see. But sometimes you need somebody that's just got that extra level. I don't know if you've done the wealth dynamics profiling, Emma, but I would be up at the top, dynamo mechanics or creator mechanics. So I like starting things. I like coming up with ideas. I like getting new things off the ground. But I've got a little bit of that mechanic in me, which is the steel energy, where I'm okay. I can set up processes. I can do Gantt charts. I can do all of that stuff, and I can follow the process. Sometimes you need somebody that's got a real steely energy, which is over on the left, and that's your accountants. That is your project managers. That's those type of people. And so what I've really tried to do, because we do the wealth dynamics profile with everyone on our team, we really understand people's strengths and weaknesses. Okay. So while I built these things up that worked, and it works really well in the contracting space, because my whole goal was having really clear transparency. You know, in refurbs and development, anyone who's doing refurbs and development will know that it can be quite difficult sometimes working with contractors. And so my goal when I set up that business was to essentially make it really, really transparent for everybody in the process. So now, with the process that I've built, I bring my team in and allow them to, okay, don't change the basic, the template document, but feel free to, if you think that we need to change formulas, or we need to change the system, or change some steps in the process, really using Asana quite a lot now to just build these things out. So now we give our team quite a lot of freedom in how they evolve the processes, and that's right across the board from SA through to development.
I love that. I love that. And in fact, you sound, quite similar to, I really love Martin Riley. I've had him on here before. He's kind of a business development coach, and he talks about, I think it's kind of like something like the power of three. So when you're trying to teach somebody to do something, you firstly, you show them how to do it, and they take their notes and they do all of that. Then you basically, I'm going to explain it wrong, but something like that. You show them how to do it. Then you watch them do it, and you kind of give them some feedback, and then they go off and do it themselves, and then you check it. And then you can actually you can like whiz that up. You can actually do that. So if it's a really big thing that clearly they're not going to get it, then you would show them 3 times how to do it. You then watch them 3 times, and then they do it 3 times, and you check it. And at that stage, they should have picked it up. But yeah, an interesting one there.
Absolutely.
So again, sort of now going on to and really sort of introducing the way that you set up your cash flow. That's what you were initially spending sort of your 70% on. Then you've moved into the profit, the assets, sort of doing that development, still following your DICE model where you're finding that demand and really ensuring that you're producing something that they need. And then you spoke about, and this is something that is really, really dear to both of our hearts, is helping other people. And inherently, I still find it quite funny that, and I used to be myself, look at people and think, well, why on earth are they doing training? Why are they doing that? They don't need to. But I think it's not until you're on the other side that you realize how incredibly rewarding it is to help people and to change their lives inherently to the better. So yeah, around kind of, that kind of leadership and personal development, what have you created now to help you with this kind of mentoring side of things?
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, touch on personal development. That was one of the things that initially brought Sen and myself together. Just to give you, for people who don't know, the way we met was actually my building company was doing some work in Sen's house, and while we were chatting away, whenever I was on site,
in each other in Sen's bedroom or something.
We actually, Sen's wife introduced us to each other in their bedroom. Yes, as controversial as that may sound.
That's classic.
Yeah. So no, we did. We met in their bedroom at their house, 2014. While my team were doing a refurb of the back end of their house, the master bedroom, ensuite, and everything. And just in the time I was there, whenever I was asking questions, Sen had just sacked the boss. He had just gone fully self-employed. Over the sort of 8 weeks we were on site, I noticed some of the books on his shelves, the same, Think and Grow Rich. There was the How to Get From Where You Are to Where You Want to Be. There's 25 Success Principles by Jack Canfield. A few different books. Rich Dad, Poor Dad being one, the classic gateway drug into property. So just noticed some of these books, and we got chatting, and so I realized that we had a very similar passion for personal development, and we've really tried to implement that across our business. We try to have weekly wins, so we have a check-in with the team. So every week we're recognizing wins, recognizing learns, and we suggest books. We haven't actually gone as far as having like a book club within the company, but Sen and I are constantly reinvesting in our education, be that through books, be that through high-level masterminds. What's
out of interest, as I know, what's Sen's wealth dynamic?
Tempo. So yeah, we've got me at the top, Sen right at the bottom, with almost identical shape. If you go to do the full profiling, you get the actual shape of where you blend into the other profiles. And Sen and I are the exact, or just about the exact shape, but opposite ends of the scale. So we work really, really well together. And then we've had someone in our business that's a very blaze energy, and someone very, very steel. Our ops manager at the minute is extremely steel, and our property manager is quite blazy. So we've got the 4 boxes ticked very nicely. But it's just been a great way for Sen and I to be able to just have this flourishing business relationship where we're both focusing on very different things. We've both got a different approach to how we do things, but it's very complementary and it works very well. So it's really good for anyone who is listening that hasn't ever done the wealth dynamics. It's highly worth doing. I would definitely recommend it. If you're building a team up, just being able to understand people's personality types and how you can align them with the most suitable operational activities in the business, you can really create a very, very strong team. So we've really focused on that. It was something we were aware of years ago, but we didn't really focus on it as much as we should have done until maybe about a year and a half ago. And since then, we've just applied it. Everyone that interviews to come on our team, we get them to do the profile test so that we can just make sure that the tasks that they would be working on day to day are really going to, allow them to be at their, personal best, allow them to be operating in their zone of genius, So that's been huge in regards to building our team up.
Amazing.
Not if that answers your question, does it?
Yeah, and then and just tell us a bit about your mentoring, how you do it. I know I've been very fortunate to attend your very first retreat.
There is no real retreat.
Which was just and incredibly not just. It's interesting, isn't it? Because especially when you know about Think and Grow Rich, it's about the emotions of it as well. And I remember, the excitement of going to such a beautiful place, to be spending time, and it really was the creation of a lot of memories. And that is such an anchor in so much. Obviously, there was a huge amount of learning, other people, masterminding, your guidance. But just tell us a little bit more about what you're doing with that now.
Okay, love to. Yeah, so that retreat was just phenomenal. It was so special being able to be there with you and the other awesome people that were there with us that month. That's something that's been very, very close to Sen and myself's heart for a long time. It's been a goal of ours to do that retreat. But what we found is that while people do courses, they understand how to do stuff. Quite often, especially if you've got a busy business, you've got families, you can get bogged down in the day-to-day. And you don't always necessarily get the opportunity to execute at the level that you need to. So for us, the thing that made the difference for us was just taking massive action. And so what we found is that the thing that really drew out the best in us, and we've been in a very privileged position for the last 5 years to be mentors and coaches with Touchstone. And that's really given us a great sort of learning platform for seeing what gets the best results for people. And because we are sort of multidisciplinary investors, we're not just focused on one strategy. We apply the same philosophy to everything we do around the business. And what we really understood is that it's getting people in the right kind of environment to really get the time away from the day-to-day, time away from the busyness, to really allow them to think about, right, okay, what is the most important thing I need to do within my business now? Why is it so important to me? And really focusing on the sort of psychological element of this is what stuff we talked about in the retreat is, why is this goal so important to me? What is it going to mean for me when I achieve this goal? And really getting to be able to enjoy the journey towards the achievement of the goal. Because any goal we set, the biggest learns, the biggest satisfaction we get is on that journey. You get to the goal and that's amazing. But then you're looking for the next thing and the next thing. So what we really enjoy doing is getting people together in an environment where they can shut out the noise of, family challenges, business challenges, work life and everything. And they can really just do the heavy lifting and the thinking about what they're trying to achieve, how they can really, really set the right kind of actions that's going to get them on the path towards the life they're trying to achieve as quickly as possible and really enjoying the journey. Life can be pretty difficult when you're out there doing things on your own. And one of the things, that coming back to January 2017, that was a challenging month. And, even after that, the growth we had off the back of, figuring out this philosophy behind it, we grew at an astronomical rate for the rest of that year. I mean, 2017 was just off the charts. We were taking on properties, several properties a month at one point. And, that brings its own challenges. And so having that support network there, to really be able to say, right, I'm just stuck on this. You've got something that you just can't see the wood through the trees sometimes, or the light through the trees. And so that we found that getting small numbers of people, 5-6 people around a table, and being able to, focus on, okay, what is the focus? What is the goal? What are you trying to achieve with your life? First and foremost, what is your life vision, and how can we make your property business support that vision? And so then we draw on not just our experience, we're there to help facilitate and bring great people together. As we did on the retreat, we go through an application process. So we're making sure that we're getting people with the right level of experience, the right energy, and just people we think will get on very, very well. And that's something we really enjoy. When you get that right energy around a table, it creates a magical experience, a magical day, month, year. And we find that by getting the right people around the table and following a set process, you know, it is following this process for extracting, okay, what challenges have you had? What do you need to be doing? Who do you need to be in contact with? And just getting to mastermind round a table with a small group, it draws in the intelligence of everybody around the table. And, you know, no matter what level you're at, being in the right type of mastermind, it just elevates you. Now, no sugarcoating it. You still have to go out, as you know, and do the hard work. There's no getting around that. But by having that, what we like to call it, your private board of advisors there that are just solely there to focus on your growth, on that during your time on the table, they're there just to support you, help you come up with ideas of how you can get from one level to the next level to the next level, and how you can enjoy it along the journey. You know, you've got that team there. They become like, you know, they're a chosen family, aren't they? You know, it's somebody you're on that journey with for however long you're in that mastermind group. And yeah, we've just found it incredibly impactful for us. We see the impact it's had on other people through doing it with Touchstone, and now we've had the privileged opportunity to launch our own DP mastermind, which we hold once a month at the Belfry in Birmingham, and it's just an incredible experience with a really, really amazing bunch of people.
Amazing. So I have popped into the chat, if anyone wants to find out a little bit more, a QR code for Chris and Sen. So if you want to find out more, then do go and jump on that. But we are already at the top of the hour. I can't believe it has gone so quick. Incredible knowledge, and we've had a lot of people. I know you're relatively new to Clubhouse, Chris, but lots of people saying, wow, there's so many nuggets here. I want to go back and listen to it on replay. So this will be on YouTube, on Emma Howitt, Pure Abode. So that will be up within the next 24 hours. And then, as I say, over the rest of this week, we'll then chop it down into shorter videos to enable people to take bite-sized chunks when you've got that 5 minutes here or there to listen to. But Chris, really appreciate you taking an hour out of your time and out of your family's holiday. You've got such a beautiful family, and yeah, really appreciate that. So yeah, Chris,
thank you so much.
No worries. And if I just
to be here, Emma.
let me just pass over to you for kind of a closing comment, really.
Yeah, well, just firstly say thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Emma, for inviting me on. It's been a privilege to be here and get to chat to you as always. Always love getting together with you. Yeah, hopefully your audience has got some value from that, some information they can take away and apply to their business. And you know, one thing I would say is just remember to enjoy the journey, folks. You know, that doing these little things just allows you to take that guesswork, take that risk out, and just really, you know, have some fun with it. You know, we're all doing this to create a life on our terms, the life of our dreams. So yeah, wish everybody all the best, and yeah, thanks again for having me on.
Oh, amazing. Okay, guys, take care. And yeah, we are on again next week, but I've only got a couple more weeks until the holidays. And then we take a break, because obviously, as Chris has said, what is most important is that we do this for our why, and my why is my family. So yeah, we've got a couple more weeks, and then we will be taking the break over the summer holidays. So thank you so much, guys. Take care, and thanks again, Chris, and see you very soon.
Thank you, Emma. Take care. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.